Hi, hello again. Welcome to Simply Taoism. Today, I want to hopefully explain by example how we really make life hard for ourselves um, when just following the natural way would have been much easier and much better. I first came across what I'm going to talk about, which is green deserts, really, is what I've called it. When I used to walk the footpaths of Warwickshire in England. And then one of the guys at the British Taoist Association told me about a book called One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka. It's a book that if you want to know more about this, if you find this interesting, then yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. He also has a few other books, Natural Farming, which tells you how to do this practically, and one that's difficult to get hold of, which is called The Way Back to Nature. Which is an expensive book, but if you're interested in spirituality and God and nature and examples of how what I'm talking about in a moment happens, then that's interesting. So what I want to do today is just show you, but not really go into too much detail. So here, sure, the rain here has made quite a big difference to some of the flowers. But what we've got is this meadowland. It's got planted trees, fruit trees, and there's walnuts here and fig trees. But mainly what we've got is lots of different types of flowers, herbs, uh, grasses, insects, the predators that feed from the insects. We've got a complete uh, chain here from tiny insects and beetles all the way up to hare and deer. Um, so you can see here, this meadow here is rich with life. Uh, Also, what you get when you have plants that are at uh, different types and different heights is that the roots of those plants go into the earth, into the soil, at different depths. And what roots do with plants is that they put oxygen and nitrogen into the earth, and they enrich it, they nourish it, and consequently, what you have is a vibrancy of life, of a rich soil with a rich wildlife as a consequence. It's as though one thing draws the other, but what you have to have is the basics right. You have to have that foundation of a good soil. So we have here lots of different birds, lots of animals. I'm going to walk through this meadow and see something a little different. So just look at this richness of life. I don't know whether you can see it. Hopefully you can. Lots of beautiful flowers. I'm getting very wet here. So rather than be content with this, mankind thinks he can do something better. Mankind thinks that he can do a better job than nature. Here it is. If you can see that, what we have is something completely different. So here is mice, which is sweet corn. Can't see what is in the other field. But what we have here, if you look, you can see, is an area of land that's totally lacking in diversity, in insects and animals. So, and we also have a plant where the roots are in at the same level. So they nourish the earth at the same level. So that means the earth is only being nourished at one particular level, but also that they take food from the earth at the same level. So it becomes depleted in certain minerals and so on. So what happens is you have one plant and you tend to have a number of insects that or predators that would like that particular plant. What you don't have is a diversity of insects and different predators and so on, and a controlled numbers, because the diversity of plants are naturally controlled. So you have this great expanse of grade A food for some kind of insect. The farmer then has a battle on his hands, or her hands, and that is firstly to fight off the insects with pest controls, to do something about the quality of the land, which over time is becoming more and more depleted. And it's becoming more depleted partly because of a single plant taking nutrition out of the ground at the same level, as I've already explained, but also because of the chemicals that are being poured into it. So the chemicals that are being poured into it often get washed away by the rain, because what happens is the ground is more open, as you can see, compared to here. You can't see the earth here. You can't see the soil, but here you can. So the soil is exposed to the sunlight, and when the sunlight comes and dries it, it goes hard. So let's see along this line here. There's the difference. There's the difference. So when this goes hard, then it's even more difficult for the water to get into the soil. So particularly in the UK, you have a lot of problems at the moment with these much bigger farms and water running into the roads and people being flooded and so on. But it also happens here. This is Austria, by the way. So Austria may be great at looking after its meadows. And I don't think I've said this already, but in England, apparently, in the last 50 or 60 years, we've lost 95% of our meadowland to this. Okay, so another thing that we need to be aware of is that clouds, they don't come from the sky. Rain doesn't come from the sky as such. It comes from the land. The moisture comes from the plants, and it goes up into the air, and at some point or other it rains back down. If you have this, what's happening is more and more dryness is coming. The heat from the sun going into the hardness of the ground gets reflected back, and you're not getting moisture going up into the air, you're getting heat. So you're getting, over time, a desert effect. With organic food, there's less problems from chemicals, of course, fewer problems, but you still got this kind of big expanse of agri-farming, I would say. So farmers would argue that they need to do something, they need something that's efficient, so they plant things together in as big a space as possible so that it costs them less to produce, because generally they're selling to supermarkets who want to make as much profit as possible. You could argue the supermarkets are the baddies here, but society really is, if society didn't want food from supermarkets, then they wouldn't be doing this kind of thing. So it's a vicious circle. So what the farmers really don't want to do is have something like this meadow. So you could have a meadow, but with things like vegetables and crops and so on, where you'd have to walk amongst them or to pick whatever you wanted. or you would have to get a lot of them together and then put them in order after you've picked them. That's very time consuming, very costly. But isn't buying chemicals and tractors and so on, big machinery, also costly? So what happens is the farmer's fighting a battle where they're trying to make the plant better. So the plant's getting less and less nutrition and nourishment from a weaker ground. The plant gets more and more weak. So it can't fend off disease as much and can't fend off predators as well. So more and more of these chemicals are needed, and fertilizers and feeders and so on. So that is also a vicious circle. And we as consumers are eating generally products that are less and less good for us. And if it's cattle and we're eating meat, then also those animals are getting less and less nutrients, and a lot of them are getting chemicals and so on. So as a consequence, we've also got to fight with genetically modified food. All this is just ridiculous when this happens naturally. So it's an example of mankind thinking he knows better. What we really need to do is, well, firstly, the best thing we can do is buy something that fits with what I've just been saying. Maybe we need to pay more for our food, so the farmer doesn't need to be doing this. We don't need to fight the natural way. Thanks for listening.